That was yesterday. Just for special people. That's what she said when I asked about the date of my adopted daughter's wedding. Not, oh, sorry, we meant to invite you. Not, it was small, just City Hall. Not even a guilty silence. Just a smirk, a shrug, and that sentence like a butcher's knife. I was rinsing out my coffee cup at the time, nothing dramatic. No teacups shattered. No chairs kicked over. I stood there, holding that mug like a fool, staring at the same girl I taught to ride a bike when she was 6. Who sobbed into my shirt when her hamster died. Who used to leave me crayon drawings that said, "Best Dad," taped to the fridge. Just for special people, she said again, this time softer, as if I was the one not understanding. I set the mug down and said, "I see." That was it. I didn't press. Didn't cry. I just walked past her in the hallway. She was still tapping away on her phone. No shame, no explanation. Just scrolling. Like I was background noise. That's the thing no one tells you about fatherhood when the child isn't yours by blood. There is no safety net for heartbreak. You give, and you give, and you pray the foundation will hold. But when they decide to remove you from their life story, it's like you never existed at all. Erased, not even with malice, just casual dismissal. She'd moved out a few years back, but her wedding prep had been a rotating door of requests. Can you co-sign this lease? Dad, do you think we can use your backyard for engagement photos? I might need help with the deposit for the venue. And like a damn fool, I helped. Every time. I thought it meant something. I went upstairs that night, sat at my desk, and opened the folder on my computer labeled Cassie, wedding. Photos she'd emailed. Venue ideas. A PDF scan of the receipt I'd paid for to reserve the place she ended up using. I selected the folder and hit delete. Then emptied the trash. No drama. No final words. Just gone. By the way, if you're listening to this and find yourself even slightly holding your breath, consider subscribing. Over 90% of you don't, and honestly, it helps our small team keep doing this. And believe me, some of these stories, they deserve to be heard. Especially the ones people like to pretend never happened. Back to it. The funny part? She didn't even notice the shift. The next day, she texted me a meme. A meme. Some corny joke about marriage and pizza. Like nothing happened. Like I hadn't been absent from the most important day of her life. I replied with a thumbs up. And then I stopped replying altogether. You know what they say about boiling water? It reveals who's pasta and who's potato. Cassie, she thought she was the chef. Thought she was in control. But the second I stopped being the guy who always answered, always paid, always forgave, she didn't know what to do with me. Not right away. That would come later. No, first came silence. Then came a slow-building confusion. And behind her silence, a growing arrogance, I imagine. She thought I was sulking, that I'd eventually get over it. But I wasn't sulking. I was calculating. She didn't know that while she was out celebrating her little special people moment, I was sitting in front of an old metal lockbox at the back of my closet, where every check stub, every tuition statement, every lease agreement was stored. Paper trail proof of exactly who made her independent life possible. She didn't know I had a spreadsheet titled Cassie Finances, Support Schedule. She didn't know I'd already added a tab called Closure. And she sure as hell didn't know I had absolutely no intention of continuing to finance someone who could look me in the eye and say I wasn't special enough to attend her wedding. That night, I poured a whiskey, sat back, and finally, let the anger slide off me like a coat I didn't need anymore. I'd spent 20 years wrapped in it. It was time to let it go. Not for peace, not for healing, but because I had a better use for the silence that was coming next. The house was too quiet. It usually is, but that night it felt surgical, like the silence of a hospital wing after visiting hours. I sat in my office, lights off except for the lamp over my desk, and stared at the wall of photos. Cassie at 5, gap-toothed and proud, holding up her first report card. Cassie in middle school, arm in a cast with a big grin and a Sharpie in her good hand. Cassie standing on the porch of her freshman dorm, hugging me like she wasn't sure if she should be excited or afraid. There was one of the two of us at a father-daughter breakfast. She'd made me a paper tie, wrote #OneDad on it in glitter. I kept it. It's still in the bottom drawer. I didn't cry. I didn't feel like crying. I felt displaced, like I'd been evicted from a life I built. I wasn't her father. I was a subscription service she forgot to cancel. I turned to the laptop. The screen blinked on to a spreadsheet I hadn't closed, her financials. Every payment I'd made since she turned 18 was documented there. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I'd always believed that when she succeeded, I'd be proud knowing I helped build the launch pad. $1,200, rent. $3,500, University, Term 1. $1,100. Textbooks and supplies. $850. Car insurance. $2,000. Wedding deposit. Venue, non-refundable. The numbers blurred. I blinked. Then, I opened a folder I hadn't touched in years. It was titled Contingency, Account Closure. I made it when she was 15, right after the first time her biological mother resurfaced. A thin, manipulative woman who floated in every few years like an oil slick, dropped a few poisonous words, then vanished again. Cassie had cried for her once. I remember standing outside her bedroom door, hearing her sob. She doesn't even know me. And I almost went in. Almost. But I didn't. Because part of me already knew, one day, she would choose that woman. Not out of logic. Not out of love. But out of blood. Because people crave origin stories more than they crave stability. I stared at that folder now. Inside it. Every banking detail linked to her. Every auto payment. Every account I'd created in her name. It had a plan for shutting everything down. Not out of spite. Out of clarity. My therapist once said that people reveal your value in the roles they assign to you. I had always thought I was dad. Turns out, I was funding. I didn't touch the phone. No text. No warning. This wasn't revenge. I wasn't angry enough for that. This was math. Balance sheets. Roy. I started the process. Step 1. Unlink the tuition autopay. She'd just finished midterms. There'd be a lull before the next payment window. Good timing. Step 2. Schedule closure of the joint credit card. I'd only ever used it for emergencies. She hadn't noticed it was in my name. Step 3. Switch the utility bills on her apartment, currently linked to my bank, from auto to manual. Let the due date knock on her door for once. Each checkbox gave me, not pleasure, but calm. It was the first time in years I wasn't reacting emotionally. No guilt. No overcompensating. Just a steady, quiet unraveling of dependency. She would feel it, but not immediately, and not loudly. That was the point. Because if she'd chosen to exclude me from the moment that defined her new life, then I was choosing to exclude myself from the machinery that propped it up. I didn't slam any doors. I didn't post a bitter status. I didn't even tell anyone. But that night, a man who once thought fatherhood was a promise realized it had been treated like a contract, and one party had defaulted. I closed the laptop, stood up, stretched, and for the first time in a long time, I slept like I wasn't waiting for a call that never came. Sunday brunch. Rustic French place in a gentrified corner of the city. Edison bulbs, overpriced eggs, too many mimosas. Cassie and her new husband, Jeremy, are sitting at the head of a long reclaimed wood table, surrounded by people who now qualify as family. Not that I was ever introduced to most of them. I recognize her biological mother across the table. Hair tighter, nails longer, posture dripping with performance. She's finally getting to play the part she abandoned decades ago. I wasn't invited. Of course, but I saw the pictures. They were all over Jeremy's aunt's Facebook page the next morning. She tagged me by accident in one photo, then untagged it. But the damage was done. Or maybe, the clarity was. The brunch took place 1 week after the wedding. I'd known it happened. Cassie hadn't even bothered to hide it, not really. But the tone of that brunch, the giddy confidence with which they erased me from the timeline, that hit different. Jeremy stood up, mimosa raised, wearing the kind of unearned confidence only men who marry into legacy think they're entitled to. To family who always believed in us, he said with a grin. Everyone clapped. Cassie stood, glass in hand, and added, to people who never let us down. The biological mother gave a smug nod, as if the lines had been rehearsed. Maybe they had. Maybe this whole brunch was less about celebration and more about rewriting history while the ink was still wet. Cassie looked around like a queen surveying her loyal court. Everyone was smiling. Everyone except one. Jeremy's aunt, Joan, I think her name was, sat halfway down the table. Older than most, more observant. She clapped politely, but something in her eyes didn't match her hands. While the rest launched into laughter and inside jokes, she quietly reached into her bag and checked her phone. I know because in one of the brunch photos, her screen is just barely visible. Zoom in. Enhance. You'd see she was scrolling through old social media posts. My posts. A birthday card Cassie drew me when she was 7. A photo of us in a canoe. Me standing in the rain at her high school graduation, soaked but smiling like an idiot while she held the diploma. She pulled up one more image. It was an old one. Cassie holding a moving box, me behind her in a campus parking lot. She'd captioned it, "Wouldn't be here without him." Funny how fast people forget their own words. Joan locked her phone, then unlocked it again. Her fingers typed something. A short message. A link, maybe a screenshot. And she sent it. Not to Cassie. Not to the mother. To someone else. That's the moment something shifted. Not in the brunch. Not in the party. But outside of it. The story had been too smooth. Too curated. And someone at that table finally noticed the smudge in the corner of the painting. Meanwhile, I was home, alone, sipping burnt coffee and trying to decide whether to clean out the garage or throw my phone into the river. I didn't know about the toast until later. Didn't hear the words in real time. But I felt them. In the way Cassie didn't text. In the silence from a girl who used to call me every Sunday like it was tradition. I was her Sunday tradition. Now I was a redacted paragraph in a memoir she rewrote with a different father. I didn't rage. I didn't fume. But I did stand up. Walked into the living room. Took down the photo of us from her high school graduation and flipped it over. On the back, in her handwriting, was a message. To the only man who ever showed up. I stared at it for a while. Then I slid the frame into a drawer. Some memories you keep. Others you bury alive. But what I didn't know was that while I was trying to forget, someone else, someone unexpected, had just started digging. Joan wasn't a gossip. She wasn't a meddler or one of those wine-sloshed ants who hover too long around family drama just to stir the pot. She was the kind who watched, noticed, filed things away. A librarian of uncomfortable truths. And something about that brunch didn't sit right with her. She had no horse in the race. No need to care, really. But that toast? That moment Cassie laughed and raised her glass. To people who never let us down, it triggered something. Not a memory. More like a question that had been quietly pacing in the back of her mind, waiting for a crack in the noise. Later that evening, alone in her condo with a cooling cup of chamomile tea, she opened her laptop. She wasn't sure what she was looking for, just following a hunch, the same way you double-check your locks even when you know you closed the door. She pulled up Cassie's old Facebook albums, still public, surprisingly. People always forget to lock the attic of their digital life. One album stood out, Best Dad Ever Read Heart. It was from years ago. Photos of Cassie with a man Joan hadn't seen mentioned once that entire wedding weekend. A man she assumed was deceased. Or estranged. Or maybe, out of the picture, in that vague way people use when they don't want to explain. But he wasn't just in the picture. He was the picture. One photo after another. Him holding her handlebars as she learned to ride. Him bandaging her scraped knee. Him dropping her off at college with an overstuffed duffel bag slung over his shoulder. Birthday parties, school plays, a shot of the two of them in the snow, building what looked like the worst snowman ever constructed by human hands. She pulled open another tab and searched his name. It didn't take long. LinkedIn. Old donation records. A GoFundMe from years ago where he'd helped pay for a classmate of Cassie's to study abroad. Anonymous donation, but she'd tagged him in the thank you post. Joan sat back, hands steepled under her chin. Then she opened her email. She typed in her brother's name, Greg, the groom's father. Subject, did you know? The body of the email was short. Did you know her adopted father paid for her college? Her apartment? Her wedding venue deposit? That man who raised her never got a mention. Not even once. Look at these. She attached screenshots. One of the graduation photo. One of a bank wire Cassie had publicly thanked him for 2 years ago, tuition covered in full. Then a final attachment. A photo of Cassie, age 8, hugging him with her arms wrapped around his neck. The caption read, "He says he's not my real dad. But real doesn't always mean blood." She hit send. Greg replied 2 minutes later. Wait, he paid for everything? I thought she was independent. That's what her mom said. Joan didn't answer right away. She was still scrolling through Cassie's engagement photos, the ones she'd sent around in a group email that included half the damn planet, but not the man in those childhood photos. Joan typed, "So who exactly was special enough to be invited to the wedding?" No response came. Because really, what was he going to say? The truth was starting to itch under the surface. A man had built an entire foundation, and these people danced on the roof pretending he wasn't holding the damn structure together. Joan wasn't angry, not yet, but she was curious. And curiosity, in the right hands, becomes a knife. She clicked through to Cassie's recent photos. No sign of her father. No mention. No tag. Erased. And something about that struck Joan as more than disrespectful. It was deliberate. Like someone had decided long ago that he didn't fit the image Cassie wanted to project. Not at her brunches. Not in her storybook wedding. Not in her social climbing life. But facts don't vanish just because you hide them. And Joan had just started flipping through the pages they tried to tear out. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was pruning the shrubs in the backyard. I remember that because my hands were in soil when the phone buzzed, and for a brief moment, I actually thought about letting it go to voicemail. Cassie's name flashed on the screen. No, hey Dad. No context. Just, hey, the rent bounced and tuition's overdue. Did you forget to transfer it? Not a greeting. Not a trace of warmth. Just a command wrapped in a question, as if I were payroll and my delay had inconvenienced her busy social calendar. I wiped my hands on my jeans, answered calmly. Didn't I tell you? A pause on the line. Tell me what? That I was stepping back. I could hear the frown in her silence. A slight huff of confusion, like she'd misheard or maybe thought I was joking. She gave a little laugh. Tight. Nervous. Fake. Okay, but seriously, the rent's past due and the tuition portal's giving me a deadline countdown. Can you just do it while I'm on the phone? I looked at the garden. The tools by my feet. The morning sun rising against the wooden fence I built with my own hands back when she was 10 and wanted a dog. I remembered her sitting there, paintbrush in hand, helping me stain it with a color she picked. Dusty earth. I'd been dust. And she'd moved on. Cassie, I said slowly, I told you. I'm stepping back. But why now? She asked, her voice a little higher, trying to slip into that old tone, the one she used when she wanted a favor in high school. Is this about the wedding? I didn't answer. She pushed harder. Come on. We've always handled this like adults. You know I'm good for it. That sentence was so absurd I actually smiled. Good for it. I repeated, not mocking. Just stunned. Cassie, when have you ever paid me back? She was quiet. And then, defensive. I didn't mean like that. I mean I appreciate everything you've done. You know I do. Appreciation. The kind that forgets your name at the toast. The kind that doesn't include you in the invite list. The kind that never mentions the man footing the bill when listing who always believed in us. Look, she continued, I just need a little help this month. We're stretched thin after the wedding, and Jeremy hasn't gotten his full commission yet. I said nothing. Let the silence breathe. She filled it. You're being petty. Still nothing. You're punishing me. That's what this is. You want me to say sorry so you can feel like you've got the high ground. And there it was, the default defense of people who think love equals obedience. I took a breath. Not angry. Not emotional. Just done. I'm not punishing you, I said. I'm removing myself from an equation that doesn't need me. She tried to laugh again, but this one cracked halfway through. Okay, I get it. You're mad. You've made your point. I didn't say another word. She added quickly. But just this once, can you transfer the rent? I don't want to deal with the landlord on top of all this. I'll fix it later. I hung up, and then I blocked the number. Not in anger. In liberation. See, a line isn't always drawn with a shout or a slammed door. Sometimes it's quiet. A single decision. A calm boundary finally enforced after years of being nothing more than a concept. Cassie would realize soon enough, the money was never automatic. It just flowed like water, until the man who built the well decided to walk away. And the faucet stayed dry. The next call came 2 days later. Different name. Same tone. This time it was her biological mother, Sabrina. A voice I hadn't heard in almost 5 years. Not since the last time she dropped by unannounced and left a trail of perfume, lies, and judgment behind like cigarette smoke. Hey, she said, all falsely upbeat. Long time. Hope I'm not catching you at a bad moment. I doubt that's ever stopped you before, I replied, dry as dust. She gave a thin chuckle. Okay, fair enough. Look, I'm just calling to talk. About Cassie. Of course you are. There was a pause. I imagined her biting a perfectly manicured nail, wondering how to start the performance. She went with something soft. They always do. She told me you've pulled back. Canceled things. I didn't respond. She's really upset, she continued. She thinks you're punishing her over a misunderstanding. And there it was, the framing. Not betrayal. Not abandonment. Just a misunderstanding. As if forgetting to invite the man who raised your child to her wedding was a scheduling error. I leaned against the kitchen counter, looking out the window at the bird feeder swaying in the breeze. A cardinal landed. Pecked once. Flew off. Even birds know when to leave something empty. I'm not punishing her, I said slowly, measuring every word. I'm correcting one. Silence on the other end. Then the scoff. Oh, come on, she snapped, dropping the warm act like a broken mask. This is so beneath you. She was nervous, okay? She didn't think you'd want to come. Nervous, I repeated flatly. So instead of asking, she erased me. She didn't erase you, she insisted. She just didn't want to make things uncomfortable. You know how complicated it's always been, between us. Ah, there it was. Us. The hidden grudge finally poking its head out. This isn't about us, I said. This is about her rewriting her life without the one person who never left. She's young, Sabrina said, suddenly sliding into maternal defense. She makes mistakes. You're the adult. You're supposed to rise above it. No, I said. I already rose above it. For 2 decades, I financed, supported, raised, guided, protected, and carried her through every stage of her life. She made a choice. So did I. She's your daughter. She's your daughter too, I said. But you didn't pay for her degree. You didn't stay up all night when she had bronchitis at 7. You didn't sell your boat so she could do summer school abroad. You just showed up when it was convenient. And now you get to sit at the wedding table. You're bitter. No, I said. I'm done. That ended the call. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't hang up in anger. Just quiet, unsettled static, and then nothing. That evening, I sat down at the dining room table with a legal pad and a laptop. The automatic payments? Canceled. The utilities? Unlinked. The tuition account? Disconnected. The backup emergency card? Removed. Her gym membership, her student union dues, the Amazon Prime account she used under my name. Gone, gone, gone. I moved through each step not with glee, not with malice, but with an eerie kind of calm. Like deleting an app you haven't used in years. No emotional residue. Just quiet satisfaction. And the whole time, I kept picturing that brunch. Cassie's glass raised, her eyes lit, laughing about people who never let us down. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she convinced herself that I wasn't family, that I was logistics. Well, logistics are cancelable. And for the first time in her life, she was about to learn the difference between unconditional love and unconditional access. It started small. A decline card at the campus bookstore. Cassie barely noticed, just assumed it was the machine acting up. She used a different one, paid, and moved on. But then her gym key fob blinked red instead of green. The receptionist smiled awkwardly. Your account's showing a payment issue. Probably just a billing error. Cassie shrugged it off. She was newly married, still glowing from the wedding, still high on the illusion that adulthood was just freedom with better lighting. Her husband, Jeremy, hadn't noticed either. He was too busy trying to hit sales quotas to qualify for that elusive bonus he kept promising would level them up. Then came the email from her university's billing office. Subject: action required, tuition unpaid. She clicked it, skimmed past the bold text. Her loan portal, which she never really understood because she never really had to, now showed a balance due of $12,750. Payment pending. Enrollment flagged. That was when the first hint of panic cracked through her nonchalance. She called the student financial office. Got bounced around. They confirmed. The automatic sponsor payment on file had been removed. She redialed. Called her mom. No answer. Called Jeremy. He picked up. Hey babe, what's up? There's something weird with school stuff. And my card. And I got a weird message from the landlord this morning. Jeremy paused. What kind of message? He said rent bounced. Bounced? He repeated. But I thought your dad. She went quiet. Cassie, he said, sharper now. I thought you said your dad had this. Her voice dropped. He always did. Jeremy sighed. Okay, well, call him. Get it sorted. We'll figure it out. They got in the car and drove to my house. I wasn't there. Or maybe I was. But the lights were off, and I didn't answer the bell. Or the knock. Or the second knock. Jeremy even tried the door handle. Locked. Solid. They left. Back at their apartment, Cassie tried her bank card again. Declined. She checked the tuition portal. Still unpaid. The door buzzed. It was the landlord. Hi, Cassie. Sorry to drop in, but we haven't received rent. Just wanted to check if everything's okay. She smiled weakly. Yeah. Just a banking mix-up. I'll handle it today. All right, he said, unconvinced. Just wanted to give a heads up. Policy says I've got to start late notice paperwork if it's not in by the end of the week. She shut the door and stood there, staring at nothing. Jeremy came out of the bedroom, holding his phone. Well, he didn't answer, she said. Did you leave a message? No. He's not picking up. And I think he blocked me. Jeremy blinked. Wait, what? She nodded slowly. Jeremy's expression darkened. This is bad, Cass. Real bad. We don't have money for both rent and school right now. And I'm not getting my commission for another 6 weeks. I didn't think I needed to worry about that yet, she said. Her voice was smaller now. He always handled the payments. Yeah, but why would he stop? She couldn't answer. Because no one warned her. No one prepared her for a world where I wasn't the automatic fix. Where I wasn't the invisible current carrying her forward. Her safety net was gone. Not cut. Just removed. And as she stood in her apartment, realizing that her life was built on credit she assumed would never expire, the quiet truth started seeping in. There was no backup plan. because she'd already burned the only person who was the plan. And now, she'd have to pay the full price of pretending I didn't matter. Joan didn't move fast. That wasn't her style. She wasn't one for impulse or confrontation. But once she saw the pattern, once the toast, the photos, and the silences lined up, she couldn't pretend anymore. Something about it felt ugly. So she waited. She waited until Cassie's curated glow from the wedding weekend wore off. Waited until her phone buzzed one too many times with Cassie's vague updates that always danced around real subjects. Waited until Jeremy, her nephew, called her to say, "Hey, Cassie's a bit stressed, not sure what's going on. Something about her dad being weird." That was the door Joan had been waiting to walk through. She called him that evening. No preamble. "You need to know what you married into." Jeremy paused. "What?" Joan was in her den, reading glasses low on her nose, documents open on the table like she was preparing for court. She'd done her homework. Screenshots, email printouts, old social media posts. Dates matched. Bank wire confirmations. Even a thank you post Cassie wrote her senior year of college. Wouldn't have made it without Dad's help. Grateful beyond words. Joan's voice stayed calm. Matter of fact. No accusation. Just truth. Her adoptive father paid her college tuition. All of it. In cash. He paid her rent. Years of it. Helped co-sign on her car. Her apartment. I even found the deposit receipt for the wedding venue. His name's on it. Jeremy didn't speak. She blocked him. Joan continued. Or at least ghosted him. Didn't invite him to the wedding. Didn't mention him at the brunch. Hell, didn't even make a toast to him. Just erased him. Silence. "You married someone," she said slowly, "who cut off the man who made her life possible. Not because he hurt her. Not because he failed her. But because he didn't fit the image she wanted." Jeremy cleared his throat. "Are you sure about all this?" "I've got records, Jeremy. This isn't gossip. This is numbers, receipts, timestamps." Another pause. Then, quietly, he said, "She told me her dad was distant. That they were never close. That he didn't really support her emotionally." Joan exhaled, but didn't laugh. Didn't even raise her voice. "She told you what she needed you to believe to justify what she did. But if you want to know who raised her, who fed her, who answered every call for help, look at who stopped paying the bills last week," and suddenly her whole world started cracking. Jeremy sounded smaller now. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I sat through that brunch," she said, tone finally tightening. "And I watched you toast the people who never let you down. And saw a man who gave 20 years of his life to your wife get treated like a footnote." Jeremy said nothing. "You should know who you married," Joan said. "Not the version she curates. The version she buries." He muttered, "I need to think." "I'd hope so." She didn't say goodbye. Just ended the call, closed her laptop, and turned off the light. Miles away, Jeremy sat alone on the edge of his bed, phone still in his hand, staring at the floor. The version of Cassie he thought he knew. The strong, self-made woman, the loyal daughter who overcame odds, had a crack running through her now. A deep, sharp one. And once you see the fracture, you can't unsee it. And though he wouldn't say it out loud, not yet, something in his stomach turned. Not anger, not heartbreak, just disgust. Not at the lie, but at how easily he believed it. He didn't slam the door. He just said, "I need some air," grabbed his keys, and walked out. No wallet, no bag, no jacket, just gone. Like he didn't expect to be long, but somehow already knew he wouldn't be coming back. Cassie stood there for a full minute after the door clicked shut, staring at the grain of the wood like it might whisper something back to her. Her phone was already buzzing in her hand, as if reflexively trying to summon him back. First a message, then another. "Jeremy, just talk to me. This is getting out of hand. I didn't lie. I just didn't tell everything. Please come back." No reply. She called. Straight to voicemail. By midnight, she had tried 3 more times. The last voicemail was quiet, shaky. "Please." I didn't know how to explain it. I thought it didn't matter anymore. At 2:17 a.m., there was a knock at the door. It wasn't Jeremy. It was her mother. Sabrina walked in without waiting for an invitation, holding a full leather handbag and a stack of self-righteousness. Her voice was sharp the moment she opened her mouth. "I told you this would happen if you didn't control the narrative," she said. "You let that ant dig around. Now look, he's gone." Cassie didn't answer, just stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, phone gripped tight in one hand. "Mom," she said quietly, "why didn't you tell me what he did for us?" Sabrina blinked. "You knew he paid my tuition. You knew he covered rent. You let me walk into that wedding pretending I was self-made while he," her voice cracked, "while he was paying for the venue." Sabrina's mouth flattened into a cold, unapologetic line. Because I didn't want to share credit. The sentence hung in the air like a lit match. I raised you too, she said. You think he's the only one who sacrificed? I didn't want people thinking he was the hero, and I was just the woman who gave birth and disappeared. But you did disappear. I came back. When it was convenient. Sabrina didn't deny it. You told me he didn't care. That he was controlling, distant. That he didn't show up for your custody hearings. Sabrina's face tightened. I needed you to trust me. No, Cassie said, voice rising. You needed me to rewrite the story so you wouldn't look like the villain. So he could be the disposable one. I didn't make you block him. I didn't make you exclude him from your wedding. No, Cassie said, tears starting now, hot and furious. You just made it easy. They stood there in the dim kitchen light. Two women, both realizing they'd crafted a narrative so carefully that neither of them knew what was true anymore. Except the fallout. That was very real. Jeremy still hadn't come home. Her tuition was still unpaid. Her rent still overdue. And the one man who'd quietly held every piece of her life together had simply disappeared. Not in rage, not in drama, but in precision, like a pillar removed from under a stage no one knew needed it. The show had gone on for years, and now the floor was caving in. It arrived on a Thursday morning, slid under the apartment door like a ghost slipping in on cold air. No stamp, no return address, just her name, in firm block letters, centered on the envelope. Cassie bent to pick it up, the way someone reaches for bad news, slowly, but with no illusions. Inside, a check. $1. She stared at it, confused for a beat. A joke? A scam? Her mind fumbled for context, until she saw the note, printed on crisp ivory paper in that same unmistakable typeface. Formal, neat, like something prepared for court. Payment for services rendered. 2 decades of unconditional love. Now settled. There was no signature. Just a logo at the bottom, understated but impossible to ignore. The Forgotten Parent Fund. Established in honor of those who gave everything, and were thanked with silence. She read it twice, then again, and again, until the hallway around her began to tilt. She dropped to the floor, knees folding like a marionette with its strings cut. The check fluttered down beside her. The letter stayed clenched in her hand, fingers digging creases into the paper as if trying to tear it without tearing it. She didn't sob, not at first, just sat there, mouth open, gasping through the weight of a grief she hadn't earned the right to avoid. It was so deliberate, so impossibly calm. He hadn't just walked away. He'd memorialized his absence, turned it into a cause, a movement, a message, a quiet monument to every man who raised a child not born of his blood, only to be edited out of the final act. And she had no reply. There was no one left to call. Jeremy hadn't returned, not even to collect his things. The fridge buzzed louder than the phone, which hadn't rung since Sunday. Her mother had gone silent too, no advice left to give. No script to read from now that the audience was gone. Cassie sat there, eyes red, palms pressed to her face as if she could hold the collapse in with pressure alone. She whispered his name once, like saying it could rewind something, anything. But there was no reply. Only the distant hum of the city outside, oblivious to the breaking of a woman who thought loyalty was disposable, who thought love was a faucet she could turn on and off. She had spent years believing she was the center of someone's world. And now, she didn't even orbit it. The $1 check lay there like a tombstone. Proof that some debts can never be repaid. Only settled. And some people, when they finally let go, they never come back.